when you have an alive idea, it's not even your idea. The idea came to you, but it came to you. So no one else is going to be able to see it the way you see it.
Hi, everyone. So good to have both of you, Katie, Suzy.
Yes, hello, and hello, Soph, and hello, Suzy. So delighted to have you as a guest. And I have to say, when I first met you, you had come at the last minute to a course that Gay and I were doing of creativity camp. And I didn't know anything about you. And through the whole course, I didn't know anything about, who you were or what you'd done. But I remember being so struck by your passionate openness to learning and your passion about exploring what is this that we're doing here on the planet, and how can we do it with more harmony. And so when then I found out, because you'd given out gifts to people, and I thought, what is this that she's giving to people? And so then is when I discovered Poo Pourri, which you invented. And I know you have many other things that you've done and contributed, but I wanted to focus on your ability to include all of life, including poop. And having people because I think almost everybody has a problematic relationship with some part of their body and just normal bodily functions. And the culture has really imbued us with that of ew, and this is good and this is bad. And a lot of that falls on women too, because you create bodies and you create new babies. But don't ever talk about menstruation that's just showing up, in this year. They just made a special on it 60 years after this first became an issue. So one of the things I most appreciate about you is that you greet all of life with a great, let's come and party and see what wants to happen here. And so, Suzy, thank you so much for sharing some time with us.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. I remember, Sophie, when I walked into, it was the creativity camp, I believe, which is so good, by the way. And I remember walking in and I kind of looked around at the crowd and I'm like, do I fit in? You kind of do that thing. And then all of a sudden you started talking and it was a couple minutes later, I was like, I'm in. I get a little teary. And then I had to fill out the application. I don't know if you remember. And it was like a 2-year LAT program. And I was crying and I was telling Katie, I don't want to graduate. And I think you made me graduate after 3 years.
Yeah. I said, I mean, you never have to go away, but we just do really want to mark that you've accomplished and you've enjoyed and you've mastered. And so having your business perspective and the unusualness of your business perspective, that's something that we might want to talk about, is that you do business in a way that's totally different than the corporate model. And I think it is such a model for us going forward, to create harmony and collaboration. So I would love to hear you talk about that.
Let's start right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I often, whenever first of all, I'm a marketer. My maiden name is Barker. That's the people that stood outside the circus, right? So I think come look at this. So I think that's within my essence, right? To tell everybody about it. But what I realized with marketing is when I first recognized that a business is a living organism. Okay, I call it a living dynamic organism because it's an entity. When you look at the word entity, like LLC, a corporation is an entity. So if you look at that as an energetic being, it's just like a child. It's similar to me. You birthed it, and then you need to take care of it. Now hopefully you don't mold and shape your child to be what the world needs. Hopefully you just amplify what this living dynamic organism is and let the people come to it. So as far as marketing, I do it completely backwards. Most people say, oh, your target consumer is Paula. She has 2.5 bedrooms, 2 dogs, right? That's who you're targeting. which is really weird to me. And I say, well, hold on, who is Poo Pourri? What's her voice? What does she look like? How does she show up in the world? What does she want to do? Where does she want to be amplified? So we stay concerned just keeping that organism, which now people know it as a brand, which I believe that's the beginning. You don't treat it like a product. You treat it like this thing that's going to grow further. And now people all over the world recognize it as a brand, not just as a product, which I feel really happy about. But I believe it's because of focusing in on its essence versus what the consumer, that's where we get all the whitewashed crap. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, well, the consumer wants this. Prices start going down, quality starts going down, and they start compromising all over the place.
Did you, when you started with those principles, did they treat you like you were some sort of weirdo? Because that was very new when you were doing it at the beginning.
Yes.
Did you meet resistance at first?
Well, I still do. You know, it's funny, if we try to get a new direct-to-consumer agency, they start going in the Target, and I'm like, no. We create, you know, even our commercials, it's to give a message and to just entertain the audience, right? And hopefully pull them in, right? We're doing all kinds of things within that, but they're always like, what consumer are we targeting? You know, and I'm like, how about we just make the best thing we can make and then see who resonates with that? And I believe that keeps, Katie, the regenerative cycle there. Right? Because that keeps regenerating energy. And that's what I want to see. It amplifies out into the world. Keeps going.
What I'm hearing that I want to just underline is that this is an inside out model. It is a supporting what is emerging. How does that want to develop? And then letting the fullness of that, the presence, kind of the muchness of that, you know, actually resonate with people rather than coming from a model of from the outside in. And that was one thing I really noticed that makes a difference.
Oh, thank you. And, you know, I'm very proud to say that I don't know if I've ever met anyone when I say, oh, I founded Poo Pourri. They're not just, you know, with delight and joy. And it's just really fun. But what I know is that they've got the message of that energetic, right? Exactly. They understand the essence of that. And I'm like, oh, that feels great. So we've done a great job. You know, it's like your child winning an Oscar or something. You know, it's like you put them through film school or whatever, acting school, and all of a sudden they're up on stage. And that's the way I feel. It's not me. You know, it's Poo Pourri. All I've done, I believe, is nurtured and cared for that to be the biggest expression it could be.
Well, and I hear you saying all I'm doing, which is a kind of I just, and I just, I want to say that I, you know, that approach, that way of being, I think is the future of any kind of successful and harmonic business. Is not trying to force people to have something because it's a trend or because other people are doing it or because you're going to look better than others, but it actually meets a need and creates kind of joy. Because just with Poo Pourri, rather than having the sense of this is a body function that I have to be about and is basically shameful, and you have a whole spray that's like, yeah, poop smells. And here's a way that you can enjoy the poop and not have an after effect that you're going to be embarrassed about. And just that whole model of every part of us can be included. I love that. And I think that that's part of the success of Poo Pourri and also of your model.
Oh, thank you.
How did you come about the idea? Like how from idea
where did you come up with that?
I don't know if you guys, I know we're all clairvoyant or whatever, but I see things in pictures, like movies, like I see them. I don't know how, but anyway, we're at a dinner party and it was a small house, one bathroom with a whole family in there. And we were talking about bathroom odor and someone said, can you trap the bathroom odor? And I have always been kind of the closet hippie over in Plano, Texas, you know what I'm saying? But I always had my oils and I literally saw it like a movie. I saw the oil floating on top of water. And I just went and I knew it was essential oils. And I just said, I can do that. Like, I just literally knew it. Now, not one person thought it was a good idea. Everybody thought I was crazy. When I would even tell them what I was doing, they would back up like 2 feet. You know, you're doing what? With what? You know,
back away from the crazy lady.
Yes. And Sophie, it took me about 9 months. I just kept mixing and making everybody test, you know, really harassing. If my neighbors would come over, I'd be like, do you got to go to the bathroom? I'd be like, number 1 or number 2, because I only could test so often, right?
Oh my. You must have been like, they must have looked at you like you were some alien for a long time.
They thought I did, but this is often why I say when you have an alive idea, it's not even your idea. The idea came to you, but it came to you. So no one else is going to be able to see it the way you see it. And if you just know this is my vision, I don't need your approval. And at that point, I'd already been bankrupt twice. I'd already fallen on my face. So I really didn't care, right? It was kind of like, it'll work or it won't and whatever. But I just was holding that vision really sacred that I was gifted to see. I knew it would work because I saw it, right? I didn't need to prove to anyone else. I had no idea it'd be what it is today, but none of that mattered. I was just interested in bringing that idea to life.
That's such a valuable thing that you're saying, is that you didn't need their approval. You know, I'm just wondering how many of our listeners really need to hear that message of, when you are creating something that's come to you or through you, you don't need others' approval, which is, again, so 180 from the way most of us are socialized, and especially women, is like, well, who is this for? And where's the committee that says this is okay? And that's a little much for you, don't you think, dear? And all of that kind of stuff. And you know, that modeling, I think, is just as valuable as the product itself.
Thank you. Yeah, and I really believe that, you know, whenever I talk about resonance, it's 2 energy waves coming together that are the similar bandwidth and speed. So they're the same. So when that idea comes to you, there's a match, right? It's just a God-given match. And if you know that, and know that it's your vision, what I've learned the hard way, I used to try to convince people of the vision, right? I'd be like, no, here's how it is. Now I've, of course, learned from my master teacher, Katie. She's so good at no, right? Getting to the yes and finding people that can support. And they don't have to see the whole vision, but they trust you enough to know that you're moving in a direction. And I think that's equally important. You know, I put resistance on me because that's what I was used to, you know, as a kind of rebel in the world and trying things new. The resistance was a muscle. I had to have something to resist off of. And then I started realizing, hold on, this is hard, man. So now what I do when I have an idea, Katie, you and I talked about a new project. Yes. And we sort of dance together to see, like, do you get the vision? Does it feel good? I get chill bumps, and it did, right?
Yes.
But that's the way we test. Like, I don't have to convince Katie of the vision, right? I just go, here's what I saw. What do you think? You know, does it feel like something you want to play? And then that creates a more, I think, cohesive and better flow of energy, honestly.
Well, to me, as I'm hearing this, it creates something that's real. It's not, I imagine that this is going to happen if we both stay up in our heads and we fiddle with it. But you have a real connection that you can feel and you can act on. And that has such great power. And you were going to say something too, Soph.
Well, I was just realizing that when I came to you I ran a company, I founded a company that had to do with sweat. Like, I invited people to these infrared pods where you could just sweat your head off. And I'm realizing that poo and sweat, it's like all these bodily function. And I remember that breakfast in Ojai when I introduced you and Gay to the idea. And I remember Gay sitting there going like, people not having to move, sweating while they're watching TV, like working out without really having to do too much of an effort. He was like, that it. And I remember anyone before that had been so, you think people are going to pay to come sweat to blah, blah. Like I was a giraffe, you know, like I was just talking complete, you know, but I remember the two of you being so like, like it was I mean, to have your team and your people, you know, just see you and support your ideas. I think it's such a an important piece of this puzzle of us, moving something in the world.
I also think that, as you were saying this, so I was getting that the resonance also is for the person who is not you. So all of what we might call your employees are really other resonance hubs.
Yeah.
And then that, in my experience, creates a mutuality and a kind of equality rather than a hierarchy. I mean, there are hierarchies of decision making, but my sense is that everybody in your company owns the vision because they have stepped into it from their own resonance to it, not because, well, this is okay job and the hours aren't so bad and then I can go home and have my real life. It's part of their passion. And I think that's really the function of business, is to create things that we need and love from a place of co-creating rather than being assigned to do something and experiencing yourself as a victim. And so I think that's part of your model, Suzy. And just because that's part of who you are.
It is. Thank you. And I was just reminded that I've been, my husband is an ordained minister since he was 15. So he's been taking me back through the Bible, which I rejected many years ago. I had my own dance here. And we were talking about how in the Bible it says, when two or more are gathered in my name. So what we've realized is that is resonance, right? In my name is the point in which we meet, right? Yes. So whether you're talking about Jesus or an idea, it's like when two or more are gathered, and then when you can feel that amplification of that gathering, that means everyone's tuned in perfectly. That's when it actually amplifies out in the world. And I believe that's the reason that most startups fail, honestly. I believe, number one, what we forget about when that idea comes to us, if there are two waves of energy, that idea has 50% of the energy that it's bringing to the party, right? Think about that. Like, when I realized that, I was like, oh, it has its own desires here, right? The way it wants to move. And if I can just keep honoring people that just come in to that, in that resonance, then it just naturally amplifies out.
What would you say happens when, I love this ideal picture, but I've also in my 50s been around enough people and companies and successes and failures. And it often doesn't work that way. Like, it doesn't often full on align. I would say more often than not in the world. Would you see, or would you say that? I mean, maybe my world has not necessarily met companies that were in alignment like that. So why do you think it's that hard for people to live that life, or to align that way?
Well, this goes back to Gay and Katie's teachings and what I've been so eternally grateful for understanding. I believe we're so far away from body intelligence that we're just using logic, right, to make decisions. And when you're only using logic, it's a very faulty, I think, method of trying to figure out what to do. When your body is awake and aligned and you start feeling whether something's right or wrong. So I believe that starts even in the hiring process. You kind of know that person's not right. You don't know how they're going to fit in the culture, but my God, their resume is so good and they're rock stars and they're the experts. I'm saying this because I've done this so many times. And it's called, as Gay and Katie teach, it's a compromise. And anytime and actually my husband and I have been practicing this, just watching ourselves flow. And what we notice, just been practicing what you teach, Katie, is that anytime things can be totally in flow, the little bit of a compromise or an override completely shifts that energetic. Right.
It's amazing how just a little thing, you don't think, it's like a gnat, or that you can just brush off, but it interrupts the resonance. I was just thinking of a tuning fork, and the tuning fork, two tuning forks together make a sound that neither one makes on its own. But if you just touch it, that little thing, boom, the resonance is gone. So we underestimate how powerful our small decisions are. I mean, it's seemingly small, but when they come from does this resonate or not place, they're just incredibly powerful, and just a small decision amplifies itself through time.
That's it. And that's how you end up with a company with mostly, I'm getting ready to work with one of the largest companies in the world. And, they're really having trouble because of AI and scrambling. And you have to think about it. If you have an entire company and nobody's, not nobody, but let's just say a majority of the workforce hasn't been considered the resonance that's in there. When something goes crazy, you just don't have a lot of cushion.
Yeah.
So resonance to me is like a cushion. It's a lubricant. And that's the way what I feel so grateful and most proud of, as far as when people talk about success, is that I have used my company as a petri dish for these teachings. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have lost millions of dollars on overrides, knowing that I'm doing it because I'm afraid that competition's going to come. And when I lose that, I think one time was this automatic unit, and I knew it. We struggled the entire time. Our team kept saying they're in struggle, but this guy had threatened me and I was worried. Anyway, it ended up, I know it was $5 or $6 million that I lost, but it wasn't just the financial impact. It was the year and a half of energy that we put towards it. But all of that stemmed from my override at the beginning. So the minute I can own that and then can start practicing to not override and to not compromising. Katie's a master, man. When we taught this, loop back to that class that we did together, which, gosh, Katie, I got to tell you what we're doing. Okay. I'll text you later. There's something. No, I want to hear. I just thought she wants to be a part of this. But this lady's credit card wouldn't go through. And Katie goes, that's it. We're done. And I'm like, what? Her credit card? And she was like, yeah, like literally ninja level. And of course the lady was mad and whatever. And I'm talking with her and she was driving from Houston. I remember saying to her, it just popped in. I said, you don't know what would have happened in the car on the way here. Like it just popped in, and I wasn't meaning it to threat because it literally just popped in, but it's true. We don't know the unknown on the other side of the no. And we don't have to know. That's what I'm learning. I spent so many trying to figure out exactly why I had an override, right?
And I want to just speak to override for listeners who may not know what we're talking about here. What I think you're mentioning, something arises in you and you align with it in a way that you can experience in your body. Yeah. And then when you're sharing that with others, the other part of resonance is when something doesn't resonate, when there's dissonance. And the dissonance is what you're speaking to. And when you or I or anybody overrides the dissonance, oh, it'll go away. Oh, they must not be feeling well today. Oh, it's probably my fault. But when you override that, that's where the problems occur. And I have found that also, many stories, of what happens when you override. And so I made a commitment, years ago, that I would not let anything go by. Because if there was a wobble, what I call a wobble, I would address it immediately, wherever it was occurring. And then it would either the dissonance would disappear because we would open up to what it was that needed to be expressed or felt or changed, or it would be, oh, this is so good that we're figuring this out now, that this just really isn't a match. And I can see you using your skills in a completely different way, or just no. And being willing to say no and stand in the, in the backwash.
Yeah. And there is backwash. Mm-hmm. I remember once we were going to film something in LA. We'd put down a $250,000 deposit. And the night before, I kept getting in my stomach. I probably didn't slow down enough to fill in at the beginning, right? To feel in, but I kept feeling like I got hit in the stomach. So it's Sunday night. We're supposed to be in LA on Monday. And I'm texting my team and I'm like, we can't go. I literally have a no. Every time because I hadn't booked my flight or something. I'm like, every time I go to book it, it's a no. And they were like, oh, we're going to lose this money. We emailed them or called them, whatever. And they totally gave us our money back. Everything was fine. But it's having the courage to be able to honor what's going on inside my body, regardless of what the external thinks about it. That is the practice.
That's the practice, in such an incredible model.
I have a question about this because when we go to I used to be 350 pounds, Suzy. So I have a story of, being twice myself, half myself, whatever. Wow. And I have to say, sometimes my body led me to choices where chocolate cake was a good answer. And it sounded like it was my body telling me. I mean, now I know that it's not, because that was really destructive. But how, for people that are listening that may not have been have the same experience or enough experience in that practice, how do we start that? Because listening to oneself sounds like we could be listening to the wrong thing. We could be listening to the voice that's like, I don't know, my mother, who easily could be like, coming at me, not lovingly. How do we learn this distinction? How did we learn it?
We're going to give this to Katie, to the master.
Oh, we are. Oh no, we're going to give it to you first, and then I'll.
Okay.
Both of you, please.
How do you? Because you work with people all the time who are not familiar with working in a resonance model. So, I mean, one thing I would toss to you is that I see you modeling it.
Yeah.
So your presence and also your invitation to others to tune in, and then you listening to them helps to clarify, and I think also helps them to begin to create a practice. But I'm imagining you have more.
Yes, thank you. One of the things, Sophie, we don't even, in a live OS, we don't even get into resonance until probably the 4th or 5th week, okay? Because what we're doing, the first lesson is an intro, and then the second lesson is harvesting. It's taking everything you thought was bad and flipping it and finding out what you learned by just sort of getting the mind to understand that everything happens and it's all good, right? Mm-hmm. Then we start working through Gay and Katie's teachings, which we say in there is clearing the clutter. Mm-hmm. Start getting rid of some of the clutter, right? Emails, your closets, cleaning that up. Then start recognizing dissonance. Start recognizing, how do you feel around people? How's your energy level? Mm-hmm. Right. So it's like a slow, steep into that. But what I found is, and in my own life, it was hard for me to recognize resonance when I'm in so much dissonance.
Yeah.
The dissonance is almost like so much noise. Mm-hmm. So that's why we spend a lot of time clearing dissonance and recognizing dissonance. And then they can start saying, and literally people get divorced, they switch jobs. Radical changes. I think people are looking for permission, which is exciting. Mm-hmm. But what happens is then they can start kind of going, hold on, I do feel better when I, experience that. But until that, it's difficult, so that's why we just focus on clearing away first some and then going into more.
Yeah, what I'm hearing in that too, Suzy, is that you're helping people to recognize their no. And so many of us, I think, didn't have the opportunity to say no and have that honored. Mm-hmm. To say no and be able to gather the strength of, saying no creates space. Mm-hmm. Like nothing else, rather than just, because it's coming at me, I have to say yes. And when people can comfortably say no, that in itself is a clutter clearer.
Yeah. And and I'm sure you experience this too. I remember with you, Katie, first, what I so appreciate and admire about you. And at first was like, it's just your amazing, it's loving directness, but you're very direct. But at first you're not used to someone, and I get that now too, because, it's like, why waste time? Like, let's just talk about it. But I do appreciate that. And I think we're taught not to do that. We're taught I was telling Keith the other night, we were meeting some people, and I'm like, that guy's slippery. And he's like, what? And you could just feel this energy like this, it's like, I don't know about that dude, just kind of, so whenever you look at things, and what I want people to understand, yes, Katie and Katie teach body intelligence, which I believe that is the best system for information. As a matter of fact, I just came to them asking them, should I get married? And my body has always had a full yes, but in my mind, and if you think of the mind as creative, my mind is creative. The mind creates. It puts together puzzles and pieces, it's this amazing creative thing. But when that is making decisions, it can get crazy land up there in my head, I'm sure. So for me, the body is the best source of true information. And even if it's Sophie, something of the past, it's like overeating, then I could say to myself, like, am I really hungry, or what am I avoiding feeling? Right? Because that's the real truth. I'm just trying to shove something in so that I don't feel what I want to be feeling. And I want to say this because Katie, I was going to text you and Gay this the other day. I realized I've been on a hardcore personal development journey for 20 years. And you know that, Katie. I mean, I'm talking 20 years at EMDR, 150 something, psychedelic journeys. Like I went for it, I'm not joking. Like I really did. And then the other day, something happened and I was consciously communicating. I found the source. I was just loving that part of myself. And like my head came up like light bulbs. Like I have worked 20 years to fix the parts so that I could love them rather than just sitting with them and loving them. Like it was the biggest duh.
In retrospect, it's a duh. But you're making that connection, is an experience of the magic that happens from the practice. And you never know when those are going to come. But always afterwards you go, oh, why didn't I get that earlier? Well, because you couldn't. And now you can.
Yeah, so I believe that goes back, even looping back to dissonance. We don't want to feel that it's dissonant because we could possibly lose something. I could lose a friend, the potential deal, whatever. There's some fear in me rather than me just sitting with the feeling afraid.
Beautiful. Just going right to the direct experience.
And then also you spoke earlier too of like not fearing disappointing people or not being afraid that maybe you're not going to like me if I say this or that, and to do that with ourselves, to be able to be like, I'm not going to reject you if you give me the wisdom that is bubbling, to be able to listen and trust that it's all, if we knew better, we would have known better, we would have done better. It's quite but it is a journey. Yeah. Like when we talk with younger women, maybe, or people on the path, I feel like a lot of what we're saying, we learned because something happened and because we saw the other side of the thing, or maybe because we didn't lose the friend when we spoke up, or I don't know that we can start there. Like it sounds like it really is a terrain that we foster and we get the wisdom as we, age or grow older or whatever.
I was just thinking as you said that, Sophie, that probably a first step would be to practice with somebody you absolutely know loves you.
Yeah.
A friend, and so that you can start trying out different things, rather than going right for the person is going to oppose you, which is what, we might want to do to prove our courage. But the little steps in a direction of your own essence, what's really true to you, those have tremendous power, even if it looks like it's a tiny step. So that would be my recommendation, is to, one or two friends or a partner who loves you, so you can play with, letting all of these different aspects come forward that have maybe been hidden down in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in my experience, Katie, I remember at first being a people-pleasing Southern girl, all that. I know we all have our own version of that, but, I remember people being so direct, like, do you want to go to dinner? Like if I'm in one of the groups and they're like, no, I'm staying here tonight. And you're like, okay. And what I so find refreshing now, and as a matter of fact, keep my circle so small, is because I only keep those people close to me now because so trustworthy. It's like, I know they're going to tell me, and that feels so good. While at first it feels a little like sandpaper, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, this is the safest place to be, because I really know what's going on for someone. And imagine if we did that with our vendors. Let's loop this back to business. If we did it with our vendors, and I've always led with honesty. I remember the first time we had our viral video went out, Sophie, and we were only doing $8 million a year. And within 2 days, we were $4 million in back order, sold all of our inventory. People were just writing us these horrible emails. You haven't shipped our product. You know, it was really, I was crying every day. And then people were like, what are we going to do? And I said, we're going to tell them the truth. And they were like, what? I said, yeah, we're going to tell them the truth. So we wrote an email. Sorry, we got caught with our pants down. You know, our systems were broken. We can give you a refund if you want. And I think we only had 2 people out of thousands of orders that wanted a refund. You know, people so appreciate the truth. So that's another thing, going back to business, is keeping that level of integrity where people can trust you as an organization. You know, I think it's very important.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
In closing, so the show is called Be, Play, Love. And so we would love to have your take on, like, what does it mean to you to be, to play, to love? Like, give us, like, how does it land inside you when you hear those words?
Yeah, I recently had a new relationship with being. So that's a fun one right now. So whenever my husband and I first met, we realized within the first 2 days with each other, we could both see each other completely. And something happened in both of our energies where we settled. I had to do a talk 2 days later. When I was on stage, it was just like I didn't have to do anything, right? I just had to walk up there and really see what came in and flowed. There was nothing prepared, rehearsed. And there was such a feeling, I just took a big breath. There was such a feeling of breath in just being, right? Knowing because in the past it was, I have to do a good job because the audience, blah, 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 you know, whatever. And none of that was there. So for me, that's being able to, and again, Katie, what I love is your thing. I'm in a relationship now where I truly feel I can be everything, right? That is within me. And that feels really safe, right? So I love that being. And playing, like, oh my gosh, I love playing. That's what I love about Gay and Katie. Everything they do is play. And I actually believe that life is play. So originally Alive OS, I wrote it 18 years ago. I don't know if you know this, Katie, but it was called Inside Out, how to create a life you desire by going within. And it was before Poo Pourri. And I wrote it based on Florence Scovel Shinn's book, The Game of Life and How to Play It, right? And that's when I started realizing that life could be this energetic play, right? It's like every moment that I'm living is play. You know, what if it weren't so serious? What if I could play with energies with multi-million-dollar deals? What if I could test if Gay and Katie's override is right? You know, it's like that is, and that's playful, right? It's going, yeah, I could lose it. It's like the person at Vegas, but you're going with an intention. So that's play. And then love. You know, again, I keep going back to my relationship because it's new, but what I found is whenever we can accept each other with every part of ourselves, whatever we're coming with, that is true love. And as I'm practicing this with my partner, I'm seeing where I'm not so practiced out in the world, right? It's such a learning for me to extend it. The wonderful thing is I'm getting to play within the depths of that, within a container that now I can start. And Katie, that's what you do. She's just love. So thank you for modeling that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing yourself so richly with us. I'm just slurping it all up.
Oh, thank you. Me too. I've been excited.
I feel like we should come up with a dance or something like that.
Yes, a dance crew. Get that interview. I'm sweating over here. That's when I know it's juicy. I've got sweat going. It's like, oh yeah, my body. See, again, my body's alive. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So
Both of you, thank you so much for being who you are in the world and here with us. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to play with you both.
And thank you for being so loving. Like you are demonstrating.
Well, I've had master teachers.
Thank you.